Good morning. Welcome to another edition of The Soapbox with me, Shawn Casemore. This is every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I related to business growth. So I want to thank you again for joining me this Saturday morning. I'm actually here in my home office near Toronto, Ontario, and did want to answer a question that was sent in this week by Jonathan B76. So shout out to Jonathan. Thanks a lot for sending in the question. Make sure if you want to send in your questions related to business growth, you can either send them to me through Twitter, just send me a direct message, or you can tweet me at Shawn Casemore, or you can feel free to email me direct, Shawn@casemoreandco.com. Be happy to answer your question. Again, every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I call this little show From the Soapbox because sometimes I'll riff a little bit. So the question that Jonathan asked was, he said, Shawn, how do I really get my employees to care about my customers? Now, Jonathan didn't elaborate on what kind of business he had, so I'm going to approach this kind of generally, but I think I'll share some ideas with you that you might be able to employ in your business. So to start off with, you have to start always with what's in it for them. So specific to your employees, what's in it for them relative to better serving your customer? If you think about a lot of folks who are on the phones daily, maybe they're in customer service, maybe they're working the phones looking for leads, that can become a very monotonous task, like other tasks. Like if you're on a production line or if you're making sales calls, I mean, any task can become monotonous over time. And on the phone, people aren't always so friendly, especially if it's customer service. They're often calling in with a concern or issue. So what tends to happen is the individuals in that role get into kind of a zone. And as you know, they do what we all do, which is bring in anything that they're carrying with them in their personal life as well. So maybe they're having a great home life, maybe it's not so good. Maybe they had a late night last night. I mean, there could be a variety of things going on. But what tends to happen is they get into this zone, and unfortunately, many companies, especially when it comes to working the phones, when it comes to customer service, they set targets and goals around number of calls answered or how quickly you can satisfy a call. Now, relative to customers, obviously it's important to deal with the customer issue quickly, but it's also important to show that you care about the customer. So the metrics that we're using are actually oftentimes creating this environment where people don't want to better serve the customer. They're just concerned about let me get through this next call, let me get on the next call, let me get on to the next call. And that doesn't serve the customer. And it creates monotony, it creates negativity, it creates boredom, all the things that you don't want if you really want your employees to care about your customers. So here are a couple things that I've done with some of my clients. In some cases, I've done secret shopping. In some cases, the client has just told me what the issues are, and we've employed these to great success. And this has worked both in a retail sector as well as in B2B, in industrial distribution. Okay, any place you've got folks who are needing to deal with customers on a regular basis. So step one, pretty straightforward. Help your employees connect with the customer, right? Now, it sounds too simple, but let me share an example. With a client a couple of years ago, and I actually wrote about this in my book, Operational Empowerment. Actually, you can see it there behind me. You saw it when we signed on this morning. In my book, I talked about a client that was doing a strategy. Every 3 years, they did their strategy. And what tended to happen was the senior management team would get together and formulate their strategy. Rarely would they ever interact with employees beforehand. So before we ever did the strategy, I went out and interviewed multiple employees to say, hey, relative to the company, what do you think the current objectives are? What do you think they should be? What do you think some of the issues are? And it just collected the views and opinions of employees, and we used that as our starting point for the strategy. The reason why we did that is to help connect employees with the customer, more importantly in this case with the strategy. So what we did at the end was we helped employees, from some earlier survey data, they had found that employees loved working there because they loved living in that area. So we actually connected the strategy with them being able to live in the area. So this is my point. You have to find out what matters to your employees, and don't assume it's money. We all know money is obviously a motivator, but it's not a long-term motivator. It's definitely not the motivator. So what matters to your employees? Understand the 2 or 3 things, and then connect back your customer with those objectives or with those things that matter most. So, going back to my example, what we did was we said, okay, it matters to employees to live in this area, but if the company doesn't continue to expand and grow, we're going to keep shrinking. The market they were in was shrinking. They were forced to expand and grow, which means they need to be more efficient. They need to be able to operate new equipment. They need to engineer new designs. And they were having a hard time getting employees to do that. So what we're able to do is say, generally speaking, we created quite a kind of a stepped process here. I'm giving the simple version, but what we really said is if we want to keep the company open and, if we want to keep it profitable, which means we can keep the doors open, which means employees can continue to work here, we have to move into these areas, and here's how you can help us. So what matters to your employees? Maybe you've talked to employees and gotten feedback. Maybe you've done a survey at some point. Maybe you've asked employees what matters to them. And with that information, then you really want to be able to connect serving the customers with those objectives. So if it's pay, maybe you tie compensation to serving customers or getting good customer reviews. If it's living in that specific area that they want to live in, they want to work where your business is, maybe it's a matter of the business, in order to sustain, needs to be able to better serve customers or more quickly serve customers, although you got to be cautious about that one. So find out what matters to your employees, and then try and draw parallels between what matters to them and what matters to you / your customers. That's step one. Step two, and I made some notes when I got Jonathan's message here. You want to make sure you help your employees, regardless of their role, better understand your customer. So I'm a big proponent of saying, hey, take that person and that guy in accounting, and take that girl in IT, and send them on a sales call with either somebody in sales, or if you're in a smaller business, with yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And this is the only way to really educate folks who don't deal with the customer every day on what the customers are really like. I'm shocked at how many companies I go into where customer service has never actually been to see the customer. Customer service has never been to see the customer. That, my friends, is ridiculous. So how can you take your employees at different times, right? You don't have to do this all at once, and take them to a customer site, take them to a customer presentation, help them experience and understand what really matters to the customer. When you start to make connections like that, you start to drive a really powerful view, if you will, of the employee relative to how they can better serve the customer. And note, this isn't just an isolated incident. This is something you'll do on a regular basis, right? Every employee should see a customer, I would say, depending on the size of your organization, number of customers you have, they should see a customer at least every couple of years, if not every year. So how can you make that happen in your business? And the third point that I noted here, just from some recent work actually, this is something I did with a client when we secretly shopped and we found some issues with how they were dealing with their customers through the phone as well as in person in some cases. What I did is said, let's put a little survey together, and you know, before you think you know what I'm saying here, we put a survey together and let's have employees score themselves relative to how they think they did in these different scenarios. Let's see what they think. Now, you might think, okay, fair enough, I get my employees to score, but then I get false readings back, or they think they did better than I think they did. Okay, but what we found was 9 times out of 10, meaning there was 1 or 2 employees who were the exception to this, right? There always is. 9 times out of 10, those employees came back and maybe didn't score themselves quite so low in some areas, but they didn't score themselves perfect. And they showed in their own view that, yeah, I have room to improve here. So if they scored a 5 out of 6 in courteousness in dealing with customers, or let's say they gave themselves a 7 out of 10 on courteous with customers, and you give them a 5 out of 10, who cares about the 2 digits? The point is they realize I'm not a 10 out of 10. And what we said is, if you score yourself less than 10 out of 10, what kinds of things do you think you should do in order to improve in that area? And then that became their performance objective with the manager or with their supervisor for the next year. So when employees, when you ask them to self-assess, hey, most people have a good head in their shoulders. They know where they might be weak and where they're strong. So you want to give them that opportunity, because now it's not somebody telling them, which means they're going to shut down. It's somebody asking them and involving them. And it really creates a whole different dynamic around where do they need to improve. They come up with their own ideas, which means they're committed to following through more so than if you tell them what they need to do. So take those 3 ideas, apply them to your business, and as I said, every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, join me here for From the Soapbox, where I answer your questions. So please shoot me a question through Twitter at Shawn Casemore. You can also send me a direct email, Shawn@casemoreandco.com. And if you enjoy these, every Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I speak on a specific topic related to business growth. So make sure you join me again Monday if you'd like to check it out, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you've got Periscope. Check me out at Shawn Casemore. Also, you can follow me on Twitter for updates on when these happen and what topics I'll be speaking to. Again, at Shawn Casemore on Twitter. So I want to thank you very much for joining me. For more articles, tips, podcasts that I record all around growing your business and improving the customer experience, make sure you check out my website as well, www.casemoreandco.com. I appreciate you joining me on this beautiful Saturday morning. I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Have a great week, and hey, make sure you send me a note. What are the questions that are on your mind that I can answer for you next Saturday morning? Check me out. Find me at Shawn Casemore. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.